Alright, let's not try to put any airs on about this thing. We all know why we're here. This list exists to keep you from experiencing these games for yourself and for me to properly vent my frustrations at these games. Now, you'll notice that not all of these are current games, and that's because I don't spend money on bad games like I'm some kind of stupid person. That being said, coming in at number 5 is Fallout Brotherhood of Steel from 2004, which I played in a quest to find something worse than Fallout 76. This game was so bad, it irreparably wrecked the reputation of Interplay, and Interplay was forced to sell off the property rights to the Fallout franchise to Bethesda. This game is basically everything you should not ever do if you have a beloved franchise. They fired their dream team that made the second game in the franchise so good, and then they went about and put terrible combat in it that would be inexcusable even in an off-brand game. Extremely crude, childish humor that even would probably make a 12-year-old a little put off. And in general, this thing seems like it takes the source material as a mild suggestion, as things are used pretty freely in this game. By the way, did I mention that this game's soundtrack is terrible and consists of a lot of really crappy nu metal bands? Like, they got a couple A-listers on here as far as the alt-metal scene goes, but most of this is probably just whatever the people developing this game were listening to at the time, and they could eke out in their budget of licensing fees. In fact, that these songs probably aren't licensed anymore, but that doesn't matter because whatever property owns these bands isn't actively looking to protect them. The ultimate insult to injury is that apparently this game isn't even its own original format and is just a reskin of a similar game that takes place in the Baldur's Gate universe. Interplay was just really making all of the bad moves in the early 2000s, and you know what? Thank goodness for Bethesda and ZeniMax buying up all the properties to all the games. I know we're not feeling too hot about them right now, but they basically saved Fallout from having a horrible legacy. Coming in at number 4 is Command & Conquer Rivals, a mobile game. Yes, I know that's low-hanging fruit, but oh not. This is an affront to everything that you love about Command & Conquer. They hollowed it out to make room for a copy and paste Clash Royale game that they can use as a facilitator of selling loot boxes. This game is embarrassingly structured around the selling of loot boxes even after they reworked the game a couple times, or at least one major overhaul. Like, don't believe me? When you level up in this game, you don't actually earn new things. You get new things placed into the rotation of your loot box. In Command & Conquer Rivals, you don't play matches to ladder or do any sort of progress. That's just a side effect of grinding for loot boxes. You don't build your decks I think they call them decks now, for actually winning. You build them so that you can accomplish tasks that get you more loot boxes. You get the cash for this game, the coins, from the loot boxes. Your login bonus is not experience, it is loot boxes. Everything in this game is loot boxes, and while the devs tried to make a passable game in spite of what they were told to do, this is just inexcusable. Kane is rolling over in his Tiberium utopia right now. Coming in at number 3 is Deus Ex Invisible War. Deus Ex Invisible War is one of the most early 2000s things ever, and it reeks of squandering something amazing you made on bad ideas. Everything in this game feels experimental and not in a necessarily good way. None of this has aged well. You start in Seattle because, just like every other early 2000s thing, it has to start in Seattle. And this game is just clunky, it is bad, the leveling biomod system is weird, there's a universal ammo system which only one game in existence has ever done that okay, and the dialogue feels meaningless. You flip-flop between sides. There is no reason to pick one side. You can just flip-flop back and forth all the way until the late game. The characters are unlikable, the world feels hastily put together, and I really don't care about this deep state proxy war between Starbucks and Pete's Coffee and Tea. I don't want it shoved in my face anymore. The only redeeming thing this game has is that apparently in this universe Hatsune Miku works for the deep state. Other than that, it's nothing but crappy gunplay, useless biomod abilities that you pick just because everything else seems more useless, and a lot of stuff that simply did not age well. Oh, by the way, this game is a nightmare to record or even play on a normal computer, and will require you have a complete overhaul fan patch in order to get this game properly running. It won't even let you run in compatibility mode. Another extremely annoying thing this game does that we will eventually talk about in depth more later is that instead of just loading levels like a normal stinking game, it tries to save processing power by launching another instance of itself and then exiting out of the current instance of the game you are in. Someone thought it was a good idea and a way to save processing power by having this game run itself twice at the same time briefly and then just exiting out of the current instance. This thing is a nightmare even when you force it to run on one processor. We are going to get very up close and personal with this game come 2019. Number 2 is Star Citizen. It is the most pre-alpha thing I have ever played, but they are asking more than a full retail price for this game. They want thousands and thousands of dollars. This game is broken, buggy, and I don't care what patch whatever point whatever did. This game is still a mess that they are asking for more and more money from. And even then, I'm not sure the concept is ultimately going to be interesting enough to attract the player base that will be needed to maintain this game. It's basically Space Truckers on steroids. Yeah, you can go raiding and stuff, but this game is so amalgamous that you're going to need literally millions of players to keep the whole economy going. It's flawed. And by the way, before we segue off into honorable mentions, I just want to draw your attention to something. I was right. I was right. I called it. I was right. They sold off 10% of Foundry 42 to investors to get more money. I called it in early July and it happened. Take that, crybabies. I was right. There's only one honorable mention on this bottom 5 list, but an honorable mention is still an honorable mention. As you might have noticed, DayZ Standalone finally hit its 1.0 a few days ago. Congratulations to Rocket and everyone else involved in the production of DayZ Standalone. You finally released your game 3.5 years after the very trend the mod helped create died out. And on top of that, it's not even anything that special. Now, at long last, it is time for the number 1 worst game I experienced in 2018. And just like the title of the video I initially made about it says, Radical Heights is still the worst game I have played in 2018. Radical Heights is uninspired. Radical Heights is in some areas an overt asset flip, and Radical Heights is a rushed cash grab. Between overtly buying assets from the Unreal Store that Fortnite itself uses in its much better iteration of this genre of game, and the few assets they made by themselves, screaming we stole this from Dr. Disrespect's costume closet and then begged him to come hang out with us, this game doesn't really do anything good, period. The controls are wonky, the netcode is inexcusably bad, and the method of getting money or whatever it is in this game is just the perfect way to open the portal to pay to win. But we all went over that. Let's talk about what really makes this game depressing. This game was so disastrously bad and following off another disastrously bad game that they ended up closing down Boss Key Studios, Cliffy B's new pet project development house, because they just couldn't make viable products. I don't even know if there was actually anything to do with money involved in the closure of the studio, because apparently Cliffy B had it pretty good with Oculus and what he invested in it. So maybe this was just a vote of no confidence or an unremovable mark of shame. What matters is that not a single good thing came from this studio. Cliff Bleszinski, you already had a $1 billion franchise. You just squandered all the dividends making terrible games. Rather than trying to create your own thing and making, I don't know, something really worth talking about and taking your time, you chased trends and made that mess that was Lawbreakers, with no concern over the pitfalls of the genre you were trying to rip off or even what made that genre good. And then, in a desperate attempt to try and keep things profitable, you gave us this abomination that has almost no original ideas, and the few ones it does have just are so poorly executed. The one thing I can say that I liked about this game was that you don't get cosmetics or loot boxes. You find them out somewhere on the battlefield, and then once you have obtained them, You may buy them using the in-game currency. Other than that, there is nothing redeemable of this game. It's ugly, the color palette is bad, the way they do money is bad, the gunplay is bad, the idea is unoriginal, the assets unoriginal. Everything about this is just a waste of everyone's time involved. You know, it's just such a complete and utter shame, isn't it? I'll tell you what, Cliffy, just send me a forwarding address and I'll make sure the ashes and paw prints of Jazz Jackrabbit are sent to wherever you want them to go. Bye.
You're waiting for snacks? What the heck was that? Did I ruin your snack waiting? Oh dear, someone's screaming out there. This is why we're moving out of this place, cat. Come on, no one out there is going to give you snacks. You are just not into the pets. Okay, they've been sneaking on you. No, I told you. No one out there is going to give you snacks. They all know you're on a diet.